So why don't we start with a personal question? Not only are you CTO, but you're also co-founder of Anapaya Systems. What made you embark on this journey?
That's a very good question. Sometimes I ask that myself. Joking aside, I was a PhD student in Adrian Perrick's group here at ETH, researching at the core of SCION, really the foundational things. And the two of us, we always talked about it would be such a shame if this technology would just stay in the research lab, and that we should eventually make the move and bring it out of that research area into the real world, because we felt that this technology could really provide answers to problems that businesses and people have that today are not easy to solve. And then fast forward a couple of years, we got the opportunity to work together with the Swiss National Bank on a project. And then we decided to go for it. And for me, it was like, on the one hand, finishing a PhD, or on the other hand, solving interesting engineering challenges, building a company, and also growing as a person through that. And then my choice was an easy one, and I don't regret it until today.
Seems you're in the right place now, and I have to say, it's not always easy taking the idea beyond the research lab. I think
that's definitely the case. Yeah.
So let's talk about the title of this session: Seamless Deployment for Quick and Easy Adoption. Do you think it is in fact quick and easy to adopt SCION? Is this an accurate title?
Yes. Absolutely.
No,
absolutely. No, let me give a bit more context. Of course, SCION is a new technology, and as such, also needs a new skill set and new knowledge that you need to acquire, right? So if you deploy traditional networking solutions today, then you will find a lot of network engineers that already have the knowledge to work with the existing products, the existing technology. With SCION, that's a bit different, also because it's a big paradigm shift in terms of networking. But beyond that, basically everything we do at Anapaya is trying to make this deployment and this adoption as quick and as easy as possible for our service provider partners, but also for the end customers. And I'd like to give a few examples, starting with our Anapaya Edge appliance. We'll get to that a bit more in the products afterwards. But one of the functionality it provides is it takes IP-based communication and translates that into a SCION communication stream and vice versa. So that means that all existing applications behind such an appliance can just keep using or can use SCION-based networks without the need for change on any of the applications. I mean, this morning we saw a lot of things, the browser that can now talk SCION, right? And other things, which is great for researchers and thinkers and new developers of new applications. But our focus was, let's make it work for the existing applications, because we're already bringing in new technology, a new network technology, and we shouldn't require all the applications to also change. That's one example. The second example would be our SCION core routers that service providers install in their network. They make use of the existing infrastructure for as much as possible. So to cover Switzerland, you can install as few as 3, 4 of these SCION core routers, and between those, you will reuse the existing infrastructure. So again, not having to replace your entire network, exchanging all your switches or routers, but building on top of your existing infrastructure was a big step into incremental deployability. And then finally, we also invest a lot in knowledge transfer. We have training programs, we have certifications, we have an interactive training environment for network operators that they can really interact with a virtual simulated SCION network and all our products in a controlled way with guided tutorials. And we do a lot of trainings just so this first point, this knowledge transfer is happening over time. So I would say yes, it's easy. It could be easier, but we'll get there.
Okay.
Sure.
So that's all well and good. What I want to ask you then is, how would you convince potentially some of the skeptics in the room, or those that even said earlier that it is a bit confusing, a bit cumbersome?
Try it out. Try it out for yourself. Join one of our trainings. Get reach out to us. We can give you access to trial licenses of our Edge appliance. We can give you connectivity to our open to the public sign attachment point. We can give you access to our trading environments, and then you can just see for yourself how it looks and feels to work with our products. We will also see in a bit the console that is there to visualize that traffic flow through the network. And I think a lot of it is confusing if you hear it for the first time, and it's very abstract because networks are somewhat abstract. But once you actually see it visualized on a screen, this helps a lot. This can help a lot.
Okay, on that note, Sam, can you actually give us some more insight on how businesses and individuals can actually get access to the SCION network? And maybe if you could share an overview of the deployment status right now in the market currently.
Right. So that's the whole reason for our existence. Anapaya, we want to enable end users and ISP service providers to offer SCION services and consume SCION services. And for that, we have developed a range of products that enable that, starting on the left with the Anapaya Core, which is our high-performance SCION router. I mentioned it before. This is used by ISPs to become what we call SCION-enabled, right? They install these SCION core routers in their existing networks, interconnect them with other SCION core routers, and that builds the backbone of the SCION network. Of course, the more the merrier. Think of the core router of a core router as a waypoint on a SCION path. And of course, the more waypoints you have, the more fine-grained your control is, the more resilient the network gets. Then we have, so that's for the backbone. Then we have on the other side the Anapaya Edge, which is this gateway into the SCION world for users of the SCION network. And it's, as I said, its primary purpose is to translate between IP-based networking and SCION-based networking. And then the secondary purpose is then, of course, with SCION, where the sender has a lot of control over which paths they want to choose, they can, or the Anapaya Edge, will make optimal path decisions for you based on network performance metrics, but also based on your own policies, which is avoid certain jurisdictions of the world, for example, or strictly keep it within, let's say, Europe, right? And then we have the gate, which is basically a scaled-up version of the Edge run by ISPs. And the purpose of the gate is to really provide a gate into the SCION world for all residential subscribers of their network. This we use today a lot for remote access to, let's say, VPN infrastructures, or also remote access to websites. So you can expose your service in the SCION internet, and through the gate, you actually reach a lot more eyeballs than if everybody had to install an Edge, right? So these are, let's say, the foundational products that make running and using a SCION network work. And then we have on top, we have as an umbrella the console, which we developed very recently. And here, this is just to give you an impression how this looks. The console basically visualizes a SCION network. You see here a global care comp that has a headquarters, an office in Paris, an office in Ashburn. You see how the traffic flows. You can hover over these traffic flows to get more insight into how much throughput, what are the latency and jitter metrics. This is all for you to understand how are you using this network. In the chaos mode, we can also introduce some link failures. So you see actually the failover dynamics of SCION. Now, this is a demo, but in real world, it actually works exactly the same. And then for configurations, if you want to now set up policies, you have the possibility to get a preview of what your policy will do. So this is a geofencing policy of Switzerland only, and you see it on the right as a preview that only the Swiss isolation domain is actually green and everything else is red, right? And finally, this is fully multi-tenant capable. So this is really thought as a central cloud-based service with multiple tenants, and each tenant can basically centrally control and visualize their network. And this is just to further make it easy to adopt and use SCION-based networks.
So I think it could also be helpful for our audience if you could provide some examples of real-world cases where SCION actually demonstrates higher security, reliability, and performance. Maybe if you could identify a few so we could visualize it.
Yes, I'd like to talk about two specifically. The first one is about reliability. So when we've built the SSFN, the Secure Swiss Finance Network, of course there was a long period of building the network and testing it, right? And as part of that testing, we really introduced many different failure scenarios. And the setup was such that we used a testing stage of the Swiss interbank clearing application, so the most critical application in the Swiss financial system. Of course, only the testing stage, not the real one. Connected via the SSFN, the sign-based network, over the multiple providers. And then we tested what would happen if we just introduce a link access failure. That's a pretty standard failure mode. You have redundant accesses, you kill one, you have another one, it should seamlessly fail over, and it did. Of course it did. But we went further. We also introduced link failures in the core of the network. That means between the service providers. For example, we killed or we introduced failures in many peerings between Swisscom, Sunrise, and Switch. But of course, always making sure that at least one network path is still available. And even in those scenarios, within milliseconds, we would actually fail over to a working path, right? And what's most important on the application level, this is the session upheld metric there, you could not see anything. Like for the application, in this case, the Swiss interbank clearing application, it didn't realize that on the network, actually, things were going really wrong, all the way to a complete provider failure where the entirety, for example, of Sunrise would just be shut down, right? And in all of these cases, we could actually upheld the session and have this super resilient communication because of this multi-pathing in combination with the immediate failover. On the other hand, we compared it to the existing finance IP network, which is a redundant MPLS-based one. We could not do all of these things because, of course, this was in productive use, so we didn't have just the testing stage to do it. But it showed that failover times were both much longer, and most importantly, on the application level, the application had to deal with that session being interrupted, which sometimes worked well and others didn't work so well. And this just shows how resilient a SCION network can be as a federated network, multiple service providers in combination with this sender path control that can immediately switch to working paths.
I think this is quite a clear visualization. Maybe if anyone in the audience, if you have a question, if you want to jump in right now with a comment. No? All clear? Okay. So why don't we move on to the next question, which is just talking about the role of innovation at Anapaya. And maybe if you could also give us a quick comment on talent, because I know that that is very important to you.
Yeah, of course. So we're a deep tech company, right? We are a spin-off of the ETH Zurich. We try to commercialize something that comes fresh out of the research lab. Of course, we need to have very talented people. That starts in engineering, because as an engineering-focused company, that's where we started our hiring first. There, I would say, most of our engineers, they come from the best universities across Europe. They could easily work for companies like Google or Meta or Amazon.
And why don't they?
Because I think they believe also in the vision, right, of Anapaya, of SCION, of working on this great technology. I think it's also, the agency that they have in really making an impact. I mean, we're not a huge company, so if you're one of 15, that makes a much bigger impact than if you're one of 20,000, right? And just also us giving them the chance to really flourish and have an impact on this exciting journey. But it's not just engineering, right? We combine that really with a lot of experience from industry veterans in product, in operations. We have a sales team that is super engaged, that is always out with the customer and can immediately relay also customer feedback directly to us. And because the ways are so short, we can react to that basically instantaneously, because we're still small, we're agile. I think some of our customers have experienced that between an interaction with us and us deploying a new feature or a fix can be as little as 2 weeks.
It's been quite a journey going from lab to where you are today. So if you could do a quick look back, what would you identify as the biggest milestone, and what would your next steps be? Maybe if you could share a quick overview there.
Yeah, so this year has been, again, an exciting year for us. Every year has been exciting, of course. I think this year specifically for me, the 100% coverage of Switzerland was a major milestone. With our gate infrastructure, we can really reach every household in Switzerland. Now, not every household yet has a reason to actually connect to SCION. We're working on that too. But technically, it's possible that every one of you can connect to the SCION network and to a service hosted in the SCION network if you're in Switzerland. That was a major, major milestone. Second, I would say, is the build-up of the secure Swiss health network. Not because it's in any way better than the finance network, but because it was, let's say, a confirmation that we're doing the right thing, right? That a different industry vertical wanted to adopt this technology for their own needs. And B, because it was that much quicker. Whereas it took us, let's say, 3 years for the SSFN, the SSHN was from concept to implementation was not even a year, barely a year. And the next ones are already in the pipeline. So that was number 2. Number 3, of course, was just our evolution of the product, our launch of the console in the beta version, and we will launch that next year in general availability, and really listening to customer feedback and acting on that, and being customer-driven also in our development. That was very important. And then finally, there is a very new, very recent development, which I'm very happy to share with you today. And that is, we have been working with AWS to build basically a blueprint and a proof of concept of that blueprint, how to connect to the AWS cloud in a SCION way. And every service provider can implement that, and every customer can use that. And I'm happy that Hanye from AWS is here today, and she will be able to tell you in detail what we did.